Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the IT community. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we have a really important guest, and that is President Michael Drake. So my name is Viji Murali. I'm the CIO and Vice Provost at UC, University of California, Davis. I'm also the chair of the UC IT Leadership Council, the Committee of CIOs at all UC locations. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Van Williams, who was formerly CIO at UC Santa Cruz just yesterday. Van became the new Vice President for Information Technology Services and UC CIO for the system-wide UC community. Congratulations, Van, and would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Viji. I'm thrilled to be here as the new UC CIO, and I look forward to supporting you all doing great things in the future. More importantly for today, I'm delighted to partner with you to co-host this town hall with President Drake.
All right, so in terms of next steps, I'll be introducing President Drake. President Drake will make a few remarks to you all, and Van and I, as co-hosts, will be asking President Drake a few questions that we have received from you all in advance. We are not doing a live Q&A. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce President Drake. Dr. Michael V. Drake, MD, was appointed the 21st president of the University of California in August of 2020. He oversees UC's world-renowned system of 10 campuses, 5 medical centers, 3 nationally affiliated labs, more than 280,000 students, and 230,000 faculty and staff. Dr. Drake previously served as president of The Ohio State University from 2014 through June of 2020. Prior to OSU, he served in several roles at the University of California, including 9 years as chancellor of UC Irvine and 5 years as the system-wide vice president for health affairs. As an ophthalmologist by training, Dr. Drake received his AB from Stanford University, his MD in residency from UC San Francisco, and his fellowship training in ophthalmology at UC San Francisco and the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Drake.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Viji and Van. It's very nice to see all of you on the screen and to be able to be a part of this town hall. And I should, as you did, Viji, welcome Van to his new role. We're pleased to have you. You've been at UC for a while, but pleased to have you joining us virtually in Oakland, and I appreciate that all very much. And I actually had my son, who's now assistant professor at Syracuse, did his fellowships at NYU, and so I spent a lot of time in and around NYU for a couple of years. And my son and his daughter, our daughter-in-law are married, and they have 2 kids, so we would go often to New York, honestly, to see the grandchildren. But we spent a lot of time in and around NYU, and appreciate what a dynamic community that is as well. So I appreciate your bringing your experience and skill from both of those postings, and look forward to working closely with you. And let me also say at the beginning that for all of the IT employees across the university, this has been an incredibly challenging time for you and for all of us. And I really want to acknowledge the challenges of your jobs and the work that you've done to try to have us pivot so quickly to online instruction and to working remotely in the spring of 2020. And then really continuing through these past 18, now running into 19 months of this very unusual period. And we really do appreciate how effectively and actively you've worked to make this work for all of us. So I want to just begin by making sure to say thank you. And let me say that also during this time, I appreciate the laser focus that you've kept on security of our networks. It's cybersecurity is one of the most profound and threatening challenges that we face as a community and as a society. And so your outstanding work to protect the integrity of our systems and data have been incredibly important. You know, we're a very large and dynamic enterprise. We have campuses and medical centers. We have the national labs. We have our our work broadly across the state in the Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. But we all work together. Our job is to try to be aligned and work for one team. And so I really appreciate the way that you all support that entire team and that entire enterprise. So let me just, if I can, say thank you for that. I know we all have lots of work to do. Appreciate what you're doing, and maybe turn it over to Van and Viji for questions, and happy to have a discussion with all.
Thank you, President Drake, for the welcome and for the acknowledgement for the great work the community is doing. We believe technology is an accelerator of the future of higher education. In that context, what are the biggest priorities and opportunities that you see at the UC? And then how can the UCIT community, both staff and CIOs, help you achieve these goals?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, as we all know, this is a very large and dynamic community. About round figures, 500,000 people, probably a few more if we look at students, faculty, and staff. And so we have great challenges and great opportunities in our daily work these days, today, tomorrow. We're really continuing to adapt to the threats and impacts of COVID on our community. Our semester campuses have now returned to school. That's Merced and Berkeley. Our quarter campuses will be returning next week and bringing students back for in-person instruction for the first time on a large scale since the spring of 2020. So that's quite it's a big transition and a big change. So one of the things that we're really focused on now is welcoming students back, making sure to do that in a fashion that is safe for them, and then getting rolling with the new level of instruction that we're doing now. And so that's one of the really important things that we're doing now. We work so getting back to educating students and doing our work on campus during COVID. That would be one thing that's really important. Other things that are really important that are high level for me to focus on are really affordability, access, and excellence across the enterprise. This is for our students, and so we're thinking a lot about that. We have a new tuition plan which will allow for tuition stability for many of our families, and actually will result in more need-based aid for most of our families. So it's a great balance between stability and affordability. And then we're looking and working on a path to a debt-free UC education, and we'd like that to be easily available to most students over the next 3 to 4 years. There's a few bridges to cross to get there, but we're moving actively toward that. You know, last week in the competing magazine world of rankings, we had rankings in Forbes magazine and in US News and World Report. I'm going to give my nod to Forbes for this ranking. I don't know how many of you saw these different things. US News and World Report's been doing rankings for a long time, and that's their main focus. And Forbes has as well. Forbes changed their methodology a bit to give more credit to institutions that provide pathways to educating people more broadly across the country. And I think look more favorably on the kinds of things that we do as public institutions, where we try to, when I mention access, affordability, and excellence, the affordability and the access are not featured as much in US News as ranking methodology as in Forbes. I think they're critically important. And I was pleased that when Forbes did this, that the University of California had 4 of the top 20 campuses, public or private, in the country, including Berkeley, which was #1 in the country for its overall impact on higher education. So I really like that. But just saying that all together, that in both of these rankings, we're featured out in an outstanding fashion, really as leaders, and we want to make sure that we maintain our excellence. And let me just finish this. There are other things that are important I'll get to, but I'll say that all of the things that we do now depend on information technology and connectivity. There's no difference between the work that we do. There's no phase of the work that we do that is not relying on information technology and sharing of information. So the work that you do is critical to all the things that we do.
President Drake, the next question comes from me. What can campus IT staff do to further the goal of increasing diversity among staff, students, and faculty?
Well, when we say access, affordability, and excellence, access really means that we're available broadly to, and we serve broadly people across the state. And so inclusive excellence is a part of our DNA. It's why we're here. I think all of us have a role in helping to lift our community and helping it to be a more inclusive and diverse community. We have lots of programs to increase diversity, and that's great. I really care about inclusion and making sure that people, when they are on campus or working with us in various ways, feel, understand, know that they're a part of our community, and that and that's critically important. So I think that this is something that we do as of kind of in a work environment, but also as individual people, as citizens, as neighbors. We do what we can to make ourselves an inclusive community, and I think it's personal work as well as institutional work.
Thank you for that. What would you like to see all staff, not just those in IT and in security, do to help create a stronger cybersecurity stance for the UC?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I think that cybersecurity is one of the most important things that it's one of our most important charges as we move forward. And what a challenge it is. You know, I grew up in a time when the Cold War was sort of raging, and during my teen years and all, there was a lot of sort of James Bond was a very popular character in movies and whatever, and the idea of kind of spy versus spy was something that we learned to worry about. I'm old enough that we would have drills where we would dive under our desks, in case there was a bomb was dropped and things. And so we had this kind of a fear of these external forces. We now see that there are different kinds of threats that are really the threats to our daily life and our existence, and they're harder to see. They're not tanks and missiles and things out of metal that explode, although there are, of course, those risks. But the risks that face us most, the ones that have affected us most, are ones that are largely invisible. The cyber risks that have lead on a daily basis someplace in the country to real problems with information security, and honestly, the public health risks that have led to the COVID crisis and that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So these are really the kind of omnipresent risks to our way of life. And in the cyber risk world, I mean, again, this is the world that you all live in and know much better than I. But there are people who are, as we speak, working on ways to break into our systems, to do things that make our lives difficult, to extract money or to interrupt our function for a variety of different reasons, from the small-time hackers to state-sponsored espionage and other kinds of work. And so it's a very big challenge for us, and I think we have to be ever vigilant and in our work and doing all we can every day to keep our eyes and ears open and peeled and get our minds focused on security. I think it's with us every day.
The pandemic led to remote education, remote healthcare, remote work. As a result, our expectations have changed, and these are here to stay to some degree. But providing this access, including in a hybrid environment of remote and on-site, is costly. Will UC assign appropriate resources to IT?
Yes.
Thank you.
Love that answer.
It's critical for us to make sure that we fund IT appropriately. I don't want to be cute. It's a critical area of importance to us, and for our progress forward and all the things that we want to do, for making sure that we can maintain security, you don't win excellence on the cheap. You have to make sure to invest wisely in people and in the hardware and software that it takes to keep us at the forefront. And so that's part of our challenge and part of our opportunity.
Thank you.
So the New York Times posted an article citing a survey by the Conference Board that found that 55% of millennials and 43% of all US workers question the wisdom of returning to work on site. A McKinsey study also reports that 52% of workers prefer a flexible work model. Our experience is that the vast majority of IT staff want to continue to work remotely. What are your thoughts on fully remote work, particularly in the IT sector?
Yeah, I'm interested in the quality of the work and the quality of the university. We have our mission to serve our students and our faculty and our staff to be a great place to work. So we want to be flexible and thoughtful about the way about our model as we go forward. And we think things are going to change. We've seen things change. So I have no fixed opinions about where people work from. It's where we can do the work the best. And I think that's how we'll continue to move forward. Some places, interestingly, we find seem to work better with people together and in person. And so we found that honestly just in this last couple of weeks, as our students have come back to campus. It's what I hear from those who are there is that there's this incredible joy of being back together and reforming this community. And we've also now we'll have to see how this goes. There's some of our faculty who were a little unsure about whether or not this was the right time to come back. What I've heard from many is that coming back again was exciting and joyful, and they had forgotten how much they missed it and how much energy there was from working with people. I'll say for me, if I can, I in these last several years, I tend to give talks on things, and it's and I didn't appreciate it so much, but the energy of being able to talk to a room full of people versus talking to my face on a screen is entirely different. And I remember actors in the old days would say that they would do movies and that was great. They were wonderful movie stars, etc. But they loved being in the theater because you really were a part of an experience, and having other people there to be a part of that experience kind of made the experience. And so I think that there are places where that's really critically important. There are places where it's not. And I want us to be flexible and look at our work output and the quality of our enterprise, and then be flexible about how people experience and contribute to that.
Retaining strong employees is important for UC's future. How are you thinking about this issue as UC president? Would UC ever consider offering additional employee benefits, such as tuition discounts or a one-to-one match to employee 403B plans?
Yeah, I would say that we look very carefully at the benefit package, which is extraordinarily rich compared to what one finds in the private sector. As a rule, I mean, there are different tugs and pulls on security and benefits packages, but we think very actively about our benefits packages, and that's an ongoing, everyday thought, I would say, in HR, and we've continued to modify those, and we'll continue to think about them. One thing I will say is that it's a bit of a Rubik's cube. We don't. There are things that we could do that would be terrific and we'd love doing, but usually a plus in one area means that we have to do something less in another area, and so we balance those things out and try to get the package that works the best for the bulk of our 220,000 employees.
What in general is UC's approach to preventing the spread of COVID at UC locations and managing return to on-site work?
Yes, well, again, you'll all be familiar with some of these things. One, the most important thing for everyone to do is to be vaccinated. It's critically important, period. And the waves that we have now, the problems that we have now are required there to be pockets of people who were not vaccinated so the virus could replicate and continue to mutate. So the sooner that everyone is vaccinated, the sooner we'll be able to look at actually getting our way out of the pandemic. And I look forward to that. So being vaccinated would be the most important thing. Second most important thing is wearing masks. From the very beginning, masks are a great protector for the wearer and a great preventative agent for keeping the virus from spreading. You mentioned that I trained as a surgeon, and I spent many years, decades, in the operating room. I wore masks all the time, and I never considered not wearing a mask when I was in the operating room. I didn't wear it to protect me. I wore it to protect the patient, and couldn't have considered not doing it. It would have been couldn't have considered it. Well, we all need to be that way and protect protecting each other from the effects of the pandemic. And the combination of masks and vaccinations should be overwhelmingly helpful. And we should see that on our campuses really in the next 2-3 weeks, once we have everyone back coming from the communities, everyone essentially vaccinated, everyone wearing masks, certainly indoors. We should see campus transmission drop to extraordinarily low levels. And that will be, we saw this in the spring, where our levels got down to, some of our campuses had 0 campus transmission for periods as long as 3 weeks. And so that was great. And others had 1 or 2 cases here or there. We expect to see that broadly across our campuses, even with in-person instruction later on by the middle of October or so. And so I think that those things are critically important. And then common sense social distancing, hand hygiene, those kinds of things all make sense as well. But the bottom line is that the virus is not a thinking organism. It just follows the biology of being airborne and moving from infected person to uninfected person. And it has to be taken, it doesn't move on its own. It has to be taken by the vector to a place where there is a person who's susceptible to being infected. And then they have to be close enough for the virus to spread from person to person. So things that we do to interrupt that viral spread will result in the virus not being spread. Things that we do to make the spread easier will continue the virus circulating around the globe.
How can IT staff across UC help our colleagues stay in touch and build community as we continue with remote work?
We've done a great job of this thus far, let me say. I mean, all that we've been able to do in this last 18 months has relied on IT and IT staff. Our meeting today relies on IT and IT staff. The 1,000 other Zoom meetings that we've had, the people who I work with for a long time and have barely met or never met, like some of the regents. We have working relationships based on the work that you do. Our instruction, our research, our support of our staff and our coworkers, all these things really depend on our information technology, and you keep the trains running. So we really do appreciate that, and honestly appreciate the quality of the work, but also the attitude, the can-do-it attitude that you've brought to us has really been quite helpful. People have really bent over backwards to keep this moving, and it's allowed us to continue to excel.
What long-term impacts do you think the pandemic will have on UC and on higher education in general?
Gosh, that's a whopping question, and so let me say a few short things and a few longer things. The short things, one is that we've learned how to do remote meetings and are more comfortable doing remote meetings than we were before, and so I think that we will travel less, have video conferencing more than we did in the past. We will, I believe that our instructional offerings will have more online and remote opportunities for students than were the case in the past, and that the quality of those will be better than was the case in the past. I think this will be another menu feature, will be quality online opportunities at several times the frequency that we had them before. We found this in medicine, and particularly in telemedicine and really telepsychiatry, where we went to nearly all of our visits, our non-emergent, non-COVID visits. All of our elective visits were online and virtual in the spring of 2020. We came back, and so now we have 70 or 80% of the number of in-person visits that we had back a year and a half ago, but we have 30 or 40% of our visits now in virtual visits. And so the total number of visits that we have in a week or a month is greater than it was when we were doing them only in person. And particularly in mental health and psychiatry, we find that there are many people who prefer telehealth visits for psychiatry. And so that may be the predominant delivery mode of much of our mental health in the future. And I'm relatively small screen for me, number of people I'm looking at, but I've had my screen full of Hollywood Squares kind of faces of people. And I've asked how many people in the screen during the last year and a half have had a telehealth visit, and pretty much everybody's hand goes up. And then how many have chosen to have a telehealth visit when they could have had an in-person visit during the last year and a half? And pretty much everyone's hand goes up. So there are things that we have learned to do by under pressure that we found that we preferred to the things that we were doing in the past. And so I think there are those kinds of changes that have happened. I think two other things are true, though. I think that there's been a I'm concerned about the impact on learning on young children, on the K through 12, particularly K through 6 kids. And so we'll work to see how they're able to kind of get back in the swing of things. I think that's been a challenge for us. And then I would say that we've had lasting disruption in our human relationships. You know, many people were lost in this. We're still losing people even today at this, you know, an incredible rate, even as we speak today. And so that pain doesn't go away. And so that pain will be with us. I think that there'll also be the appreciation of people being together. I remember in the spring when we first were able to all be vaccinated, we were able to spend time with family members who we hadn't really seen except socially distanced or on screen. And I just wanted to appreciate every second of being with them and how that really was what was most important. And I think that realization will stay with us as well.
The IT landscape changes continuously and rapidly. How can the CIOs support you in assessing and interpreting the realities, risks, and demands?
Well, you're all very good at this, and you work together. I think that that's been tremendous. And I would say that one of the things that we, as the University of California, try to do is to stay at the front of the pack and continue to move forward. And having that spirit, I said affordability, access, and excellence, and continuing to be excellent at what you do, I think will continue to motivate you to be at the front of the pack. And I look forward to working closely with you. And I'm sure we're going to continue to move it forward.
So continuing on that theme of affordability, access, and excellence, what role does technology have in supporting stronger student outcomes, and what needs to shift in terms of capability, organization, culture, or otherwise to take full advantage of this opportunity?
I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to answer another question first, if I can. And the other question first, just in case, I just wanted to make sure to say that I wanted to make sure people know that it's election day today. And for those who have not mailed in their ballots, it's critically important that you vote today. And I won't tell you how to vote. You know, you ought to vote correctly, but I won't tell you how to vote. But it's just really important that you vote. And you know, when I grew up during the civil rights fights of the 60s, and I knew that people were actually giving their lives for the purpose of creating the opportunity for other people, for people like me, to be able to vote. And it was a palpable thing. People risked their lives. People actually died for that purpose. And it was kind of profound to think that there were actually forces out there that were willing to murder people to keep them from allowing people to vote, which is a right for all of us. I mean, that those forces were there. So I've always felt that it was just a duty, a civic duty, to honor the people who had risked so much and gave so much to make it that we all could vote. It was my civic duty to go out there and honor them by voting. So I just want to say that if there's anyone on the screen who's not found time yet to do that, it's just think about the people and what people gave up to make it that you could do this, and think about the forces that were so desperate that you'd not express your opinion. They're willing to kill other people. I mean, it's mind-boggling and shocking that it's true, and try and honor those who put their lives on the line for you, and really exercise your privilege to be able to vote. So I was thinking about the voting, and I didn't know sure if you were going to say anything. So if I got the wrong answer, tell me that you can give me the question again, since I was thinking about voting, and yeah. So
no, I think that's the exact right digression. What role does technology have in supporting stronger student outcomes, and what needs to shift in terms of capability, organization, culture, or otherwise to take full advantage of this opportunity?
your students are fully digitally savvy. They've grown up in this world, and so they get a huge amount of their information through digital means. And I think we have to understand that well. I didn't teach last year. I taught for 15 years, undergraduates, but up until last year because we were remote. But all of my coursework was online. The students didn't have to buy a book or use a piece of paper during the course. And I thought that the course was richer because we could use multimedia and technology enhanced ways of delivering information. I think that's going to continually be the case, that we deliver information. Well, in our labs, we create information using information technology. We deliver it in the digital fashion to our students. They respond to us that way. And I believe that's going to be the new world that we're in. I was speaking of faculty on undergraduate campuses and things that we do differently. When I went to speak with faculty, you have to go and make an appointment for office hours and knock on the door. And actually, it took a little bit of energy to be able to do that. I remember one of the doors. I'm at UCSF today, where I was in medical school, and I remember going to one of the doors. I remember the name of the faculty member, and I got ready to knock on his door, and I saw his title and all these different things that he'd done and I couldn't do it. I can't ask that guy a question. I made it back after a while, but it was intimidating to see that. I think that now faculty are holding office hours virtually, and students just have to log on and talk to somebody there on the screen, which I think is much easier for students, particularly those who are a little bit shy. And so I think we'll have many ways of interacting with our students and enhancing the quality of their education, with a balance between the things we do in person and the things we do virtually.
What is the most exciting to you about UC's research enterprise? How can we preserve and grow UC's research excellence in the coming years?
Yeah, the most exciting thing I'd say to me about UC's research enterprise is the brilliant people and brilliant and hardworking people who have created it and sustained it and have allowed it to continue to grow for my whole life at the university. There are always incredible discoveries. There's a great celebration of knowledge. I say as a university, there are two things that we focus on, but the center of both of them is knowledge. So we think of transmitting knowledge through our teaching. That's a big part of what we do, but we're also really focused on creating knowledge through our research, discovering knowledge and creating knowledge before it's shared. And that part of it, the excitement of the research enterprise, which is so core to what it means to be a research university, has been something that I found thrilling from the very beginning. And it's great when you see the work that any of us or that people are doing, talk with our faculty. It's always at the cutting edge, always at the cutting edge. That's great. We have a year like we did in 2020, where we shared in 3 of the 6 Nobel Prizes in the world. I mean, we really are recognized for this. And I think that we have a history of great things happening today. And what we're thinking about is even greater things happening tomorrow.
What would we need to move from a system of 280,000 students to one supporting significantly more?
Well, I think that's a great question. We'd want to access, affordability, and excellence again. Access means that we have the ability to teach and train as many people as we can. And so I would say that part of the way that we'll be able to do that is by more virtual education. And we are on a daily basis experimenting with and learning more about that. You mentioned that I was in Columbus for a while, and there was a bit of data that I shared when I was there in the fall of 2019, and not knowing what was coming. But we about just under 40% of our students who are living on campus were taking at least one course online. So they had their in-person courses, they had all the things they did, all the things that are the value and the pleasure of the resident experience at a college. That was all happening. But to enhance their pathway through the curriculum, they used online education from time to time, 1 course, 2 courses. Only fewer than 5% of the students were taking their entire semester of courses online. So fully online education was rare, but about 35-40% were taking at least 1 course online. And by the time they graduated, almost everyone took at least 1 course online. And so I think that that having virtual education will allow the passageway through the curriculum to be smoother and more efficient. And as such, we'd be able to educate more students. And that's something that I think will be an important part of our future. We're also thinking of growing the size of our entering classes. And the plan that we have is to grow our enrollment over this next decade by the equivalent of a new campus, campus roughly the size of Santa Cruz. So about 20,000 new undergraduate and graduate students being a part of our community by the end of this decade. And so that's sort of like adding another whole campus without the planning and building up another separate campus. And that requires efficiency and focus. And we're rolling our sleeves up to try to do our best to plan for that and make it a reality.
President Drake, this is the last question for you. What are the opportunities for synergy in cross-campus research?
So a couple things that I would say. If I think about our university and its broad, the things that we do broadly and the things that are most important to us, there are 3 or 4 that I can think of. We mentioned earlier being an inclusive community, and we want to be a safe community. So we put out just recently a community safety plan that has us looking at ways we can work together to make us a safer and more welcoming community to people from all across our footprint. We think about the big problems of the world, and if I think about the big problems of the world, one that's front of mind is the climate challenge that we have, and things we can do for carbon capture or regenerative agriculture, things we can do to try to be a better system of working that way. I mentioned cybersecurity. We've mentioned the University of California and its research enterprise. All of those things are better when we work together from campus to campus. So we have campus-wide or system-wide groups that meet to focus on community safety and racial justice. We have system-wide communities that meet to focus on cybersecurity, that meet to focus on climate change, on carbon capture, on regenerative agriculture, and those things. And so we have a series of really outstanding parts, but there are places where the whole can be greater than the sum of those parts, and we can do things together to really help to move the needle on the biggest challenges that we face in our society. And I think that works across really across our footprint. And so it works for information technology, it works for our education, it works for our science, it works for being a better and more nurturing community. And I'm pleased to know that we have colleagues interested in doing this across our system.
Van, would you like to ask Rachel's question? I know we have a few minutes left, President Drake.
So, President Drake, if you're open to one last one.
I am, yes.
There's a related question to the last one. How can we increase collaboration between faculty, staff, and students? And this could present richer opportunities for students while increasing campus-wide engagement and innovation.
You know, I think as we think of ourselves as a community, and we appreciate the privilege that we have to work in this really incredible community, that we keep ourselves open to other people, to other ideas, and to collaborating and working with people. I'm asked a lot. You know, we were 9 years in Irvine and 6 years in Columbus, so that's 15 years in one of those roles. And the average lifespan is about 5 to 6 years, you know, and so this was like three tours. And we were often asked, why'd you come back? Why do more of this? And the thing that I mentioned most is the opportunity to work with the people who I had such a wonderful time working with before, and the great energy that we get from working with each other. And so I would say that as we are open to that, as we see each other as partners in this grand experiment of being the best we can be, of fulfilling our human potential, that I think that allows us to come together as a community. And I feel it. I felt it when I was here. We felt it when we came back, and it's one of the great privileges of being a part of the University of California.
President Drake, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you answering all of our questions. And thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the audience today.
Well, great to have a chance to see everyone, and appreciate it. And Make sure you go out and vote, and we will I look forward to doing this again. Welcome aboard, Van, and I hope everyone has a great day and a wonderful week. Good to see you.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.